Dear students, welcome back. Now in this session we are going to discuss about the abdominal part of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, the abdomen is supplied by both the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. The sympathetic nerves are derived from two sources. One is the lumbar sympathetic trunk. So these are the lumbar sympathetic trunks, okay, which supplies somatic branches to the lower abdominal wall and the lower limb. So we have studied the lumbar flexus, isn't it? So those are coming from this lumbar sympathetic trunk only. So the branches which are arising from this lumbar sympathetic trunk supplies the somatic branches to the lower abdominal wall and the lower limb, and also it supplies some visceral branches for the pelvic organs. Okay, here you can see the transverse section through the lumbar region to look for the location of lumbar sympathetic chain. Here you can find this lumbar sympathetic trunk. So on the right side behind the inferior vena cava you can find this sympathetic trunk, and on the left side by the side of this aorta you can find this sympathetic chain. Okay, yes. Now the other source for this sympathetic nerves is the celiac plexus, formed by splanchnic nerves from the thorax, which supplies all the abdominal organs including the gonads. Okay, here we can see this is the celiac plexus. Okay, so these celiac plexus which are formed by the splanchnic nerves. So these are the splanchnic nerves which are formed by the splanchnic nerves from the thorax. That means the visceral organs of the thorax. Okay, the nerves which are supplied to the visceral organs. So some of the nerves which forms the celiac plexus, which also supplies the abdominal organs including the gonads. Okay, and the parasympathetic nerves are derived from two sources. One is the vagus nerve. So this is the 10th vagus nerve, 10th cranial nerve is the vagus nerve. This vagus nerve joins the celiac plexus. That means it gives some branch to the celiac plexus. So it is one source. And next one is the pelvic splanchnic nerves. So here this is the pelvic splanchnic nerves which arise from S2, S3 and 4. So these will join the inferior hypogastric plexus. So these are the two sources for the parasympathetic nerves. Okay, now we will see the lumbar sympathetic chain. So this is a ganglionated chain situated on either side of the bodies of the lumbar vertebra, containing 5 ganglion. You can find out L1, L2, L3, L4 and L5. The lumbar sympathetic chain is continuous with the thoracic part deep to the medial arcuate ligament. It runs vertically downwards along the medial margin of psoas major muscle. So it runs vertically downwards on the medial margin of a psoas major muscle. We know that this psoas major muscle like this. So on the medial margin this sympathetic chain will present, and across the lumbar vessels. On the right side it is overlapped by the inferior vena cava. On the left side by the lateral aortic lymph nodes. So on the right side it is overlapped by the inferior vena cava. On left side it is overlapped by the lateral aortic lymph nodes. Okay, so the lumbar chain ends by becoming continuous with the sacral part of the sympathetic chain. So behind the common iliac flexus, this lumbar chain ends behind the common iliac vessels. Okay, these are the common iliac vessels. So the lumbar chain ends, here you can see the lumbar chain ends by becoming continuous with the sacral part of the sympathetic chain behind the common iliac vessels. So here we can't see this sympathetic chain here. Okay, the anterior primary rami of the first and second lumbar nerves. Here you can see the anterior primary rami of first and second lumbar nerves send some white rami communicants to the corresponding ganglion. This is the ganglion. They will give a white ramus. Okay, white rami communicants to the corresponding ganglion. If you see the branches on the lateral aspect, all the 5 lumbar nerves receive grey rami communicants from the corresponding lumbar ganglion. So all the 5 nerves will receive the grey ramus. Only L1 and L2 will give the white ramus to the ganglion. Okay. Next, and these grey rami carry fibers which are distributed to the lower abdominal wall and the lower limb. Next, coming to the medial side. So this part is lateral side, and coming to the medial side, so some of the nerves we can see on the medial side also, which are forming some plexus there in front of the aorta. So what are those things? On the medial side, the lumbar splanchnic nerves are generally 4 in number. So one is here, L1, L2 forms a common ganglion there. So from upper 2, okay, upper 2 splanchnic nerves, okay, the lumbar splanchnic nerves are the upper 2 join with the celiac plexus. Okay, these two form the celiac plexus, and the remaining two not only celiac plexus, the upper 2, and it also forming the aortic flexus also. Now commonly it is present on the in between the celiac plexus and superior hypogastric plexus. So here you can find the superior hypogastric plexus. Okay, so what happens? The lower 2 join. So the lower 2 join the superior hypogastric plexus here. Okay, the upper 2 medial lumbar splanchnic nerves join with the celiac plexus as well as the aortic plexus. Okay, and the lower 2 join to form the superior hypogastric plexus. Okay, this is about the lumbar sympathetic chain, and we will move on to the parasympathetic. So here we have seen that the parasympathetic nerves are derived from 2 sources. One is the vagus and other one is the pelvic splanchnic nerves. So this pelvic splanchnic nerves actually, okay, joins the inferior hypogastric plexus. These 2 pelvic splanchnic nerves forms the inferior hypogastric plexus. Okay, now we will see the vagus. Okay, so a pair of vagus is present. One is the right vagus and the left vagus, isn't it? And this normally the right vagus supplies the parasympathetic supply to neck, thorax and abdomen, isn't it? Yes. Now, during the development, the rotation of the foregut structure results in the right vagus nerve being on the posterior vagal trunk, whereas the left vagal nerve forms the anterior vagal nerve. So the right vagus forms the posterior vagal trunk and the left vagus forms the anterior vagal trunk. Okay. Now we will see the anterior vagal trunk, how it supplies. So the anterior vagal trunk, which is primarily from the fibers of left vagus nerve, from the esophageal plexus, which is seen in thorax. So this left vagus passes through the esophageal opening, that is esophageal hiatus of the diaphragm, okay, and it comes to the anterior aspect of the stomach and it supplies the anterior surface of the stomach. And this one also, so here you can see the hiatus here, so it is entering along with the esophagus on the anterior aspect and it is supplying the anterior surface of the stomach, and it is also sends a hepatic branch. So this vagus nerve also sends a hepatic branch which travels within the lesser omentum to reach the liver. So the lesser omentum is the peritoneal fold which connects the lesser curvature of the stomach to the liver. So through this lesser omentum, a branch from the left vagus is also supplied to the liver. Okay. Now coming to the right vagus, so this forms the posterior vagal nerve, vagal trunk, isn't it? Yes. This one also formed primarily from the fibers of the right vagus nerve from the esophageal plexus, which is also passing through the esophageal hiatus of the diaphragm on the posterior aspect to enter into the abdomen, and which is innervating the posterior surface of the stomach. So which is innervating the posterior surface of the stomach, and it sends an important branch to the celiac, ganglion and plexus. We have seen the celiac plexus on the anterior aspect of the aorta near the celiac trunk. Okay, so this right vagus sends an important branch to the celiac ganglia and plexus. So from there it supplies to the remaining visceral organs which are present inside the trunk, inside the abdomen. Okay, so some of the presynaptic parasympathetic fibers generally synapse in the wall of the organ they innervate. Many small diffused postsynaptic neurons within the organ walls which innervate the smooth muscles usually causes peristalsis and glandular cells to cause them to secrete their products. So they usually functions as secretomotor. So these are all about the abdominal part of the autonomic nervous system. Thank you.